I think there's a lot of tactics that sport climbers use that can be really beneficial to boulders that boulders maybe don't use as much.
Like, what did you bring from that projecting world on sport climbing into the bouldering world?
Yeah, this is actually something I've been thinking about a lot because I think there's a lot of tactics that sport climbers use that can be really beneficial to boulders that boulders maybe don't use as much. Not everyone projects sport roots the same, but I had a philosophy from pretty early on to like really beat roots down to the point where when you actually send, it's like not that hard anymore because you've trained on it so much. And it's pretty easy to train on sport roots. You can just break it into sections and then just huck laps, do the section again, do the section again. And it builds this kind of specific endurance that can let you do things, pretty quick and not by accident a lot of the time. So I try to bring some of that into bouldering, kind of that same philosophy of trying to, not let something feel like it was an accident. Like I want to feel like I'm prepared and then I send because I am fully prepared for that thing. I think in bouldering, it's like easier to kind of get into the mentality of like, oh, I did the move, so now I'm going to try the link, as opposed to like, no, I'm going to like work this until it's like not that hard for me anymore. And some people do that really well, but I think it's a less used tactic maybe.
That's interesting to think about dialing something in when it's only a few moves. Like Lucid really is just a handful of hard moves.
Yeah, I mean, Lucid was definitely different. It was, I think, actually harder to find a way to use that tactic, but I still tried to. On Lucid, really the reason I think I sent it and sent it decently quick is because on my previous session, it was like kind of a harder work session. And then to finish the session off, I went to that, the last move, and I was totally dead, but was able to do the last move like twice in a row. And that was like super confidence building because then in my mind, I was thinking, okay, like if I get up here, I'm going to feel better than this. And I know I have decent consistency on the move. So I think stuff like that like that building confidence can be super helpful. Which obviously, people do that in all styles of climbing, but I think sometimes the way people do it in bouldering is a little different. In sport climbing, it's like, for me, a lot about repetition.
Something that I see in sport climbing a lot more is there's a more relaxed posture. There's a more breathing opportunities that gets taken. The intensity of a sport climber, even in the middle of the crux, usually looks like dialed down at least a notch compared to that kind of absolute aggro, like battling through those two moves to get to the top in bouldering. Do you see something like that, or am I just way off in left field here?
Well, I kind of feel like in sport climbing, there's a lot of different flows that can be effective. And everyone's got different flows that work for them. And I think, a lot of what makes a really great sport climber great is their ability to kind of switch between different flows depending on where on the route they are and kind of what it requires. So I think that's a useful tactic in bouldering too. I think something shorter like Lucid, you're not thinking about that quite as much, but a lot of the harder boulders these days are getting longer. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to kind of play with speed and intensity to change the efficiency. Because like the way I see it is if you climb, faster with a little more intensity, your speed's going to be lower. Sometimes that's actually more efficient than trying to climb it as flowy as you can because it slows the whole thing down. So I think on the longer boulders that can be helpful. Like on Grand Illusion, for example, I felt like really like I was sport climbing it. Like it was all about good flow, good efficient movement, like not trying to power through too much. So the speed kind of goes down, but I think the efficiency was worth it. Until you hit the crux, then that crux is like you just have to try hard. So making that flip switch, I think, is one of the harder things to learn in sport climbing, and can definitely be helpful in bouldering too.